Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Azoic Publisher Profiles. Today, I'm talking to Tyler Benedict, owner and founder of Bikerumor.com. We talked about how to develop your website's tone of voice, how he created an a la carte paid content strategy, and how to run a lean online business. So, stay tuned for more. We like to ask this question to everyone starting out, but how did your journey as a digital publisher begin?
Well, I had a couple of beverage companies before this, and honestly, those were, they range from like a powdered sports drink mix for athletes up to ready to drink energy drink product. And if I'm being totally honest, those were largely excuses to be mobile and be able to go around to different cycling events. Because I was always a big mountain biker and stuff, and just really like riding and traveling to cool places and stuff. And so they were essentially a marketing tool to be able to justify going to races all over the US and just hanging out and riding more, which is probably why those businesses both failed. And so when the last one was kind of saw the writing on the wall with that, I wanted to do something. And like I said, I was really into cycling, but what I found is that like there was very little out there that was a blog style format in the cycling space. And so we're talking about 2008 is when I started. 2007 is kind of like the genesis of the idea, and we launched in '08. But it moved pretty quickly from idea. So I was a big fan of the Engadget blog, and in the bike space, there was nothing like that. There was a lot of news sites and things covering the cycling industry, but not really any that were using that kind of blog role, just like rapid fire, here's what's new, and not really any that were just really 100% focused on the products. And so while we started trying to cover like a little bit of everything, advocacy and industry news and racing news, we pretty quickly figured out that our interests lied in the products and the technology. And so when we started to just focus almost exclusively on that stuff is when we got really good, and when we really started seeing our readership go up. So yeah, that's kind of how it is. I mean, honestly, like I didn't even know what WordPress was when we started. I sketched out what I want the website to look like, and I sent it to a developer, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, that's a WordPress site." I'm like, "Great, what's WordPress?" And so it's just I relied on somebody else's expertise to help us pick the platform, because I was thinking it would have to be something totally custom built. So,
Correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like you just kind of identified an opportunity based on something you were already interested in, and there was a lack of that in the space. Is that right?
yeah, more or less. I mean, if I wasn't interested in it, I wouldn't have done it. I'd be like, it's really hard to do something day in and day out that you're not really truly interested in. And if you're passionate about that, it's even better, because it makes all that hard work and easier. And like it is a lot of hard work. Like I'm coaching a couple guys that are launching websites sometime, and like one of the biggest things is like, look, you might think you can hire some writers, but if you're not willing to sit there and crank out the content or whatever it is that you're going to be doing for like the first 6 months to a year, just constantly, like you have to do that yourself, I think, in order to not really just like find your voice, right? And it's not just your personal voice. Like I have my writing style. All of our other writers have their own writing styles. And for the most part, I kind of let that slide, let it go, right? Because I want people to be able to identify where the content's coming from the writers. But ultimately, the site itself has to have its voice. Like Bikerumor has a tone of voice on how we cover and how we talk about things that's consistent across all of it, whether or not, and then we have our own little individual nuances that get applied to that. But, you need that framework. And like I said, like we started covering everything, and then we slowly but surely whittled it down to we're only focused on the products and tech. And that's part of our voice, right? Like your voice is what you're going to cover. And if we had to start there to get to there, because we didn't really realize like why some of our content sucked and wasn't getting anything until we realized like, oh, it's because we just don't really care about that so much. Like we don't really care about the racing news. We don't really care about like the who's getting hired in this brand. We just like the shiny stuff. And so, so that would be kind of part of it. And then the other part is you asked about the name, like how did we come up with the name? And honestly, it was looking around to see what was available. But what I wanted to do was I had seen a few other sites have different different categories, but with a similar naming structure. And so what I started looking at was not only could I get bike rumor, could I get, ski rumor and skate rumor and BMX rumor and, at one point I had like obstacle course rumor, and it was just kind of like sup rumor, right? Like all these different things. I mean, I've started whittling them away when I realized like that there's nothing ever going to happen with it, or it's just not enough interest. But like I had like 99 different somethingrumor.com
Wow.
domains, and we had like with Bikerumor, I went ahead and got, the plural, so bikerumors.com. And for many of them higher interest ones, the ones that I thought maybe we'll do something with one day, I had the plurals. But then like for this, I also had like the UK spelling. So it was bike rumor, like
With the U.
RUMOUR,
Yeah.
right? And then the plural of that. Because the last thing you want is for somebody to come in and kind of see that you're having some success and then kind of co-opt your naming style and your theme and be able to sort of confuse the marketplace, right? So I would say, it's going to get harder and harder if you want a .com, because it's like, it seems like all the good names are taken. And then if you're trying to find a bunch of similar ones that are related, man, it's like, good luck, right? But
Yeah.
it's, I
No,
think it's
exactly.
important if you want to protect your kind of identity in the space. And it also, it gives you room to grow, right? Like, you could ultimately, once you find your voice, if you had the right funding, you could hire people to go create the content in these other verticals. And really, instead of building like a website, you're building a media company. So sort of depends
Yeah,
on what your long-term goals are.
absolutely. And the next question I was going to ask is, what strategies did you use to grow your traffic in the beginning? But you already touched on that a little bit, I think, in your last answer, where you said in the beginning, things were more broad, you were covering more, and then as time went on, you seemed to focus more on certain things over others. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I wish I had some kind of magic bullet strategy. Honestly, it was just pumping out as much content as possible. Like our strategy, and I say like for the first year and a half or so, it was really just me. Like my strategy in the beginning was just pump out as much content as humanly possible. And, you know, at some point you're going to hit something right with SEO. And then when you learn about SEO, and so our strategy really has been just pump out a lot of really good content. And as we learn more about SEO, which, every year we learn something new, every week we learn something new, it seems like, is just make sure that you're getting those SEO basics, like headline and image tags and image titles and subheadings and like structure. And I mean, there's so much that people think, SEO, like, I don't even know. Right. But like, there's like 10 key things that are pretty basic. And if you do all of
Absolutely.
those with every post, you're going to rank, right? And when you get something out first, you're going to rank higher. And so that was our goal, really, was to just be first with new product announcements and news, and kind of some, play up the rumors and do some spy shots and patent profiles and stuff, like, or patent findings and stuff. So as far as like growing our traffic, honestly, I think I've tried boosting some posts maybe 6 or 7 times over the 12 and a half years we've been in business, and probably only spent like $500 to do it, cumulative.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's really all organic growth. Now, I will say that any site that was around in that like maybe like 2010 through like 2014 time period really benefited from Facebook's push to make people use Facebook as a source for news,
Yeah.
because anything that was published, they would almost like self promote. And then they started getting to the point where like, okay, you got to pay a little, and then pay a little more, and then pay a
Yeah.
little more. Now it's like almost pointless to try and expect any kind of organic reach on social media, and Facebook especially. So we really benefited from that, as did, like pretty much every website out at that time.
Yeah.
So, for social now, I would say if you're not willing to pay to boost stuff, then I would not count on social doing much for you in terms of growing your audience, unless you're, the only alternative to paying, I think, is to actually pay somebody to be on there and engaging with your audience just constantly, because you can kind of game the numbers a little bit through a lot of engagement. But one way or another, you're paying for social to do it. You're either paying somebody or you're paying social.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you spoke on how in the beginning your strategy was kind of just like pumping out content, being first to cover something. How has that evolved now? Are there things you do now differently that you would have never imagined doing in the beginning, or comparing the two?
Um, well, we're doing more video, and that's kind of a separate topic in that it's just sort of like another avenue for getting your content out there that is becoming more and more important. And so, we're admittedly pretty late to the game on that compared to, there's been upstarts, just like we disrupted the traditional website type media when we came up with the blog format, and for many years kind of like led that, and we had people following us. Now we're kind of following the people that came in from a video first standpoint and have grown their YouTube channels to, almost 2 million subscribers in some cases, and we're way below that. And so that's one thing we've had to change. I would say it's almost just like adapt and add as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to change. But one thing I've noticed is, like people started catching on, and have for years now, that getting the news out first is hugely important, right? Because what it does is, it not only do you kind of win with SEO, but it trains your readers to go to you first, right? Like I say, okay, if I want to get the news, like I know I'm going to go to Bikerumor and see almost all the new stuff before anywhere else and stuff. And so, it's not rocket science, and other websites will start to copy that. So it's kind of, it's almost like trying to beat people on price, right? Like
Yeah.
there's diminishing returns, and ultimately it becomes a race to the bottom, or it's just everybody has the same basic info out at the same time as everyone else. So then what it ends up with is, okay, well, who can write a better post? And a lot of that's with SEO and structure and all that. A lot of it's just like the tone of writing, right? Like, which one do you like reading? We all have our favorite authors and bloggers and YouTubers and all that, and a lot of times it's because you feel a connection with the way they communicate. So that's why it's sort of important to actually have a tone of voice. Whether you reach everyone or not, you're going to have your fans and your followers and the people who would choose to go to your website or YouTube channel or whatever over everybody else. So that's one, we kind of do that. And then the other strategy for us is like, all right, well, if we're not leading on being first all the time anymore, what else can we do? And, for us, it's okay, well, we can try and get more reviews out, because reviews are, it's not like a who's up first type thing. In most cases, it's who's got the best review or who's reviewing the most interesting items, the highest interest items. Um, yeah, I'd say it's something we're constantly figuring out and evolving, because it changes all the time, right? Because you have like, what's new is now a commodity. Everybody's got it,
Yeah.
so it's not special anymore. It's not what separates us anymore. It's trying to branch out into tangential categories, like, you know, some automotive, kind of like overlanding van life stuff is pretty popular for us. And so it's, what can we stretch into a little bit that's related and super interesting, but not alienating?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned tone, and then earlier you said, you know, each of your writers have their own style, but as a brand of Bike Rumor, you guys all keep the same tone. And so that kind of alludes to that you currently you have, you're not writing all your own content, um, just by yourself. And I was gonna make that two pronged in the sense of a question of like in the beginning in 2000, did you say 2008?
Yeah.
Did you write all your own content in the beginning? And
Oh, yeah.
compared to that, now what does that look like for you? Do you have a team of writers? And then, going back to the tone, how do you kind of ensure that that tone stays the same amongst writers?
Yeah. So yes, the answer to the question, when I started, I was definitely writing all of the content myself. I mean, I started this up in my living room, basically. And while the beverage company was going down, this started going up, and I just figured I would just keep producing content and see what happened. People liked it, so I saw that there was potential, and it was kind of like that. You get your first $100 AdSense check, and you're super excited, and then
Yeah.
you realize, like, okay, well, so there's something here, right? Like, let's just keep going on this. There have been a few times when I put out kind of like a call for writers, and what I've found is the best writers that I have, and the ones that have been with me the longest, some of them for many years now, they're the ones that reached out of their own accord and said, hey, you guys looking for writers, or could I reviews, help out, whatever. And I ease everyone into it, because having put a call out and gone through a lot of time and energy to train some people, only to literally, they'll do one post sometimes, or sometimes no posts for us, because once they realize how much work it actually is to write a story, they're like, nope, ghost. And
Yeah.
so that's really tough. And I think it's probably not getting easier based on, I've got a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old, and they do not write. They don't read, right? Like they watch video. And so I
Yeah,
think trying to find writers coming up, and this is actually a challenge that we're facing, and I think a lot of other cycling sites and magazines and everything are facing too, is that we see, it's not, I don't even know what the word for it is, but basically it's like, there's just like, somebody's writing here for a minute and they'll like go to work for a PR agency, or they go to work for a brand, and then they'll come back to a different website or magazine. And it's the same people bouncing everywhere. And there's very little fresh talent come into the cycling journalism space. So we're hungry for new talent, not just us personally, but like if you're a cyclist and you can write technical product information and actually have a personality, like please reach out.
reach
Like
out.
we're all looking for good content producers and stuff. But like for us to maintain kind of a site, like I have a style guide and a writer's guide that says like, look, this is how we do it. This is, it's a lot of it's really SEO heavy to train people on, the proper
Absolutely.
structure and stuff. But then another, it's just explain, say, look, like here's the two things that we do at Bikerumor, right? Like we're not holier than thou. There's some sites out there that are like, we're the experts. Here's what you need to know. And this is the way it is. And we're like, look, here's this new product. Here's what's cool about it. Here's a little bit of background. Here's all the information you need. Make your own decision, right? Like, what's right for you. I don't know what's right for you. I don't know where you ride. I don't know how you ride. I don't know how tall you are, short you are, big you are, whatever, right? So, we just try and prove that, and we do it in a conversational tone, right? Like the one rule I have is like, look, talk about, right, as though you're explaining this new thing to your friend. So we don't need fancy phrasing in English literature. We need casual conversational tone, because that's how I would want to be talked to. And like, that's how I'm telling my buddies when I'm out riding. I'm not like, well, this particular blah, blah, blah. I was like, dude, this
Yeah,
thing's sick, right?
yeah, absolutely. You kind of mentioned, so you've had writers in the past who you made a call out for writers. They come on, maybe write a thing or two, and realize, whoa, this is way more work than I thought. I'm not going to be involved. And so you're kind of like, well, there goes a writer. But for the ones that you've retained and brought on, how do you measure ROI for their writing? Is it page views? Do you see the quality SEO wise? What does it look like for you to retain a writer, and how do you measure success for your writers?
We don't. We're so low tech in terms of measurement. Honestly, it's, like what I'm looking at are our page views steady or growing, and if not, why? And sometimes it's just, honestly, it's like the volume, right? Like if we're
Yep.
a little slow on posting, we're not posting as much, the volume drops, and or the traffic volume drops a little bit, and then some of it's seasonal too, which we can get into later if you want. But honestly, I don't measure it, and it's partially because lazy is not the right word, but like I'm just, if we're doing well, then that seems like a lot of extra work to put in measurements. And I know some sites have KPIs around like total page views per day, and so for that, then it becomes this giant, like he said, it's like a view meter. I call it a stress meter, right? Like
Yeah.
you can only control so much. So like, what are you going to do if you're not quite at that number of page views you need? Like, are you going to, I guess you could hop on social and pound out a few like promotions and stuff. Like there's a lot probably could be doing to drive those numbers up too. But ultimately, I think why I've been able to retain the people that I have is because it's a pretty low stress environment. I mean, there's
Hmm.
times a year in certain events when you're crushing it, and we work harder than anybody else, I think. But then the rest of it's like, look, as long as we're getting the news out when it comes in, we're doing this. Like I've got one guy, my right hand man is pretty much MIA this week because he's moving. And
Yeah.
literally he's moving like 4 houses down the street, but he's still moving. He's got a 8-month-old at home. So I'm like, like I'm not bugging him saying, dude, come on, like I do something tonight. And it's just like, do it, if you can help out, and
Yeah.
great. But yeah, so we try and keep it super key. Everybody knows what's expected of them. Everybody knows why we're doing it and why speed is important. And, like that's the thing, is you have to kind of trust your team to do it. And, I think any entrepreneur or founder, or, somebody who's starting up a site is going to have some control issues. I certainly do. but I'm learning to let go of them and say, look, good enough is good enough. And these people are going to do it
Mhm.
differently than me. The important thing is that we got that story up and it's accurate and it's timely.
Yeah, absolutely. So you don't focus too heavily on like KPIs, success measurements, but you did mention something I picked up on was the volume aspect of what you said of like you think that your stability or growth is due to volume. And that kind of bleeds in a little bit to my next question, which was when you first started Bike Rumor, what did your like how did your monthly content production look back then? Was it
Mhm.
just a few articles, that was it, compared to now? Like if you could look back on both, what would your first few months of 1 month of content production for Bike Rumor look like versus now? Like how can you gauge how much you would do then versus now with your
Well,
team?
it's more now because I have a team. When we started, it was just me. So, but when we started, I was probably trying to get 4 to 8 things out per day because I was the one filling the homepage. And so I will say the one thing I look at and I
Per
do try,
day? That's a lot.
yeah,
That's
weekdays. We really don't produce anything on the weekends. Like again, that's probably a growth
yeah,
opportunity because our traffic is like this every
it
week,
does the
right?
ebb
And,
and
and
flow.
it's
Yep. Hmm.
yeah. So Saturday, Sunday are usually pretty low, but maybe that's because we're not pushing stuff out, but also maybe it's because people aren't sitting in front of the computer because our highest traffic times are also US work hours, right? So people are just going to work and looking at our website, right? I don't think they're looking at it as much when they're at home, which is good. They should be out playing. But yeah, in terms of volume, so there is like one very loose measurement I use. Metric is like, and it depends on the layout of the site at any given point too. But like ultimately, my goal would be to have the front page flush, right? Like I want, if somebody checks us in the morning and then they come back the next morning, I want that whole first page to be new stuff that they haven't seen yet.
Wow.
Because I feel like that's going to get people to click to page two. And that's obviously when you get, pages per visit, that's key. Now, that said, a lot of people are coming in on search. So a lot of people aren't even coming in at the home page.
Yep.
Um, and then if they click around, like we try and do some things to get them to click around there. But yeah, that is one thing where like a personal goal is that I would love to see the front page flushed every day. Now, if you
That's
have
impressive.
50 posts on your page, like we had for a while, we had only 9 posts showing on the front page. And that's pretty reasonable, right? Like if you have 4 or
Yeah.
5 people contributing, everyone's doing 1 to 2 per day, then you can accomplish that.
What's the size of your team roughly? Is it like
Got me, I've got Zach, Corey, and Jesse May. That's kind of the 4 core
four
people.
people?
And
Yeah.
then we have a handful of freelancers that contribute here and there. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's nothing per month, sometimes it's 3 or 4 per month. So yeah, it sort of varies. The ones that are reliable, or the ones that are basically like this is their job, is the 4 of us. And honestly, like I don't produce nearly as much daily content anymore. Like I think my average, I actually just pulled all this data up. I was one of the lowest average daily posts of the 4 of us for the past 2 months because I'm trying to focus more on like actually running the company and stuff. And so
For
I
sure.
will say that the nice thing is like I've built this team that can do what they need to do without very much oversight.
Yeah, that's really impressive. And I guess as a digital publisher who's scaled over the years, that a lot of people, that's the goal, right? It's something that with the right team in place, you can step away if you need to, strategize, do things that are outside of the most time consuming part of being a digital publisher, which is the physical creation of the content. And
Yes,
it
it
seems like
is.
you've done that. We both know that. You've done that pretty successfully. But I also spent some time on my own kind of digging into your website, and I wanted to get into some specifics. I saw on your website that you have an ask a stupid question section. What was the
Mhm.
thought behind having this additionally, like on top of just having a contact form section?
Yeah, so it's every Friday we publish our Ask a Stupid question, and it's one of those things where readers can send in whatever questions. We've got like a huge list of questions. I'm pretty
Wow.
stoked on the uptake of that. Like people are kind of into that, especially when we answer their questions. Because it's what it is like we realized that Ask Me Anythings are pretty popular. It's a popular kind of format, right? Um, and a lot of people call it AMAs and Ask Me Anything. So I didn't
Hmm.
want to call it the same thing, but I just kind of like the frivolity of asking a stupid question. And then it's nice that the acronym actually kind of sounds out ask, AASQ.
Yeah.
So it's just, that was sort of fun. But the point of it is we realized like, look, we're like this gateway, right? Like you have the brands and the companies that we all ride their products here, and you have all the riders and consumers over here. And we're here in this middle. We're like this gateway between the two. And so like, Jack or Jill Ryder over here can't just call up Shimano and say, hey guys, like, tell me about this, right? Or here's my problem. Here's my question. Here's, what's going on with this new product. But we can call up just about any brand and they'll answer the phone. They'll tell us the answers, right? So we figured, all right, like, let's take advantage of this and let's be this, fun gateway for our readers to get feedback from the brands. And then it's also a pretty popular sponsored topic too. So brands sponsor it pretty frequently on a particular topic. Like the one last Friday was Ritchie Components about gravel bike handlebars and gravel bike cockpit setup and stuff. And they did a really good job with it. And so for that, it's like a popular topic. It's universal information, but it just so happens that we're going to talk to one brand for the answers instead of reaching out to like 4 or 5 brands and trying to get this kind of like composite answer. So that's that was sort of the reasoning behind that one.
Yeah, that's awesome. You got a double whammy in terms of the benefit. You are getting engagement from your readers and the writers, and then you also have the opportunity when brands want to be the people to sponsor those answers. That's really cool.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I should back up a little bit for that because, I mean, never mind just that it's a cool content piece, right? Like a
Yeah.
cool content format. What we were really late to the game on was paid content, like advertorial, sponsored content, whatever you want to call it and stuff. And the reason why is because we saw a lot of media outlets doing a really, really bad job of it. It was just
Oh yeah.
gross, it like felt dirty to even see it, let alone read it. And like, if I were a brand, I wouldn't want to be involved in that. But a lot of brands wanted that stuff, and a lot of media companies were making a lot of money off of this stuff. So I had to step back and say, okay, look, like we have to do something. Paid content's going to be an ever increasingly important part of our revenue strategy because banner ads continually drop in value, and a lot of people are coming either blocking them or becoming banner blind, whatever. So there's a lot of reasons why you need to diversify your revenue off of banner ads. And so what we're looking at is like, well, what can we do, right? Like we're not going to just run some crappy advertorial. So it was really looking at creating, instead of like having to come up with something custom every time, we like, look, we have this, we have our ASQ, here's this package, right? We have our reader survey contest, here's this package, here's the price, here's the price, here's the price, a la carte, what do you want to do? And it made it so easy for our advertisers to look at it and say, I get that, right? Like that's easy to understand. I
Yep.
see the value in it and I know what it is. Boom, done. It's in our budget. And it's been really easy for us to sell too. So I think that was honestly, like, that was the reason why we came up with it. And then, it's just kind of fine tuning it to make it something that our readers would actually enjoy and want to read.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really that's a very smart decision. And I think most publishers should, if there's one thing to take away from this interview, it'd probably be what everything you just spoke of, because of the fact that a lot of publishers think in reverse of where I want to be a digital publisher and I want to make money. And so you might, as a reader, you might come across these sites who have these kind of like thin content, there's advertorials that are really just serving the advertiser. But the way you just described it to me, you have it a la carte where the content is there first, the audience already enjoys it, and then the advertiser's approaching you where you're saying, hey, this is what we produce and here's what you can, attach yourself to as something that you could sponsor. But it really doesn't change the quality of the content or its relationship to the reader. And I think
Right.
that's a really, really smart business decision on your part.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. Like, and that was ultimately, like, I have a hierarchy, right? Like it has to benefit our readers, and then it has to benefit the advertiser. And if both of those two criteria are met, then it benefits us, right? Because we get better page views, we get more traffic because the readers like it. We get paid because the advertiser likes the concept. So ultimately, if the readers aren't interested, like, don't even do it. It's got to be
Yeah,
good for the readers first.
absolutely. Um, So I know we've kind of fallen onto this topic of sponsored content, monetization. I wanted to ask you, how did you monetize your website in the past, maybe in the beginning, and how do you monetize your website now? What are the differences between the two?
Yeah, I think we started like everybody, which is AdSense, because it's, there's like no reason not to. And pretty much anybody can sign up for it. So if you're just starting out, just sign up for an AdSense account because you get paid pretty much from day one. And then it was kind of like, once you actually stow some traffic and stuff, you'll have ad networks reaching out to you and they'll all promise you the same thing, oh, we'll give you more revenue and stuff. And so like I literally had a waterfall spreadsheet of like who's paying what per position and all this stuff. And I've like, inside DFP, which is, if you're not familiar, it's kind of like Google's next level up from
Yeah.
AdSense. It's their platform management thing that lets you run your own ads and then also run network ads, and it'll just kind of like you can assign values and stuff. Like there's plenty of information out there about it.
Yeah.
But so we had like, at one point, like I think up to 5 different ad networks we were running and stuff. And we gradually got better and better ones, and it got up to the point where we were prior to going to Ezoic, which is like a next level of kind of like ad customization, or I guess like, all the customization that Ezoic allows and kind of like real time automated customization, I'm failing at the right words for what you guys do, but we had like some pretty good networks and we were
Yeah.
making decent money. And then I think whoever it was from Ezoic, I forget her name that signed us up, right? She eventually bugged me enough that we signed up for it, and it was literally like we doubled our ad network revenue overnight. So it was,
Wow.
once I saw the sample, we just turned it on 100% and stuff. And then like now I pretty much ignore all of the other, sorry, let me cancel this other call. Yeah. And so that was, basically what we did is we just worked up to better and better ad networks as we grew. And, a lot of sites will find out as you grow, like a lot of them look at your traffic. And so when you hit a certain threshold of daily traffic or weekly, monthly traffic, right, then they'll be like, okay, yeah, we can work with you, and they'll get better and better and stuff. And then I would definitely take a look at Ezoic's system when you have the traffic to justify it.
And I know you said you were kind of late to the game for sponsored content. Are there any other revenue streams or diversification that goes on now that maybe you didn't touch in the beginning when you were just on AdSense?
Yeah, affiliate. We've been trying harder this year with that. I mean, really specifically this year because the banner rates dropped so
Yep.
precipitously when COVID hit that we were like, what else can we do? So because even the content side, the sponsored content side dried up because a lot of people put
Yep.
their budgets on hold. So we had stuff scheduled. Everyone's just like, let's just put a hold on that for now. And
Hmm.
so that stuff's rolling back in now here in November. But it's the affiliate side is like I talked to some other sites before that actually had like a full-time affiliate manager, and I'm like, really? Because I know how much time and energy it takes to put an affiliate link on something, and like we've got good traffic and we'll make like $5, and they're like, oh yeah, pays full-time for their job and we're still making thousands of dollars a month. And I'm like, well, we must be missing something. So honestly, it was just kind of like my wife does most of it. So we'll do like a weekend kind of weekly mega deals that's posted on a Saturday morning, most Saturdays now, not every Saturday. And, obviously you want to take advantage of things like Black Friday deals, and
Yep.
Memorial Day sale was crazy good for us, but it's just time and energy, like getting set up with all the affiliate programs and then just checking it. I mean, it kind of is like everything else. How much time and energy do you want to put into it? And what's the opportunity cost? So for me personally, like it doesn't make sense for me to go and try and create like an affiliate deals roundup post, but it does make sense for if I know we have an affiliate deal with a brand and I've already written a story on them to just like copy paste that affiliate code into it because it takes 5 minutes and maybe we'll make some money. But yeah, you just kind of have to weigh the time because it does take a considerable amount of time to actually manage a good affiliate program and put some effort into it. But then you have sites like I don't want to name it, but there are sites out
Sure.
there that it's like a gear site that is almost entirely an affiliate revenue play, like
Yeah.
because it's almost all top 10 lists or best everyday carries or best this, best that, and it's such thin content and it's all
Yeah.
affiliate links, right? Like it's almost I really obviously it works because they've been around for a long time
It
and they've got
does. Yep.
numbers, But I really wonder how you don't fatigue your readers on that, because like I signed up for all their emails just to see, and I'm like, literally, I don't need every day to see the top 10 deals for
Yeah.
outdoor gear for like 5 or 6 different categories. Like I'm not shopping all day, every day. I don't get
Yeah.
it. It
And
works.
not only that, I think as well, just from the perspective of what we saw with COVID, with ad rates, falling the way they did, I think in the long run, like publishers like yourself and others who think more long term instead of the immediate, like what check can I get this month, it's going to add longevity and allow the brands that you guys are creating and publishers are creating to survive, and really thrive when you learn how to diversify your revenue. Because if you have all your eggs in one basket, um, that's when you can get into trouble when things like COVID happen, where if you're relying 100% on display ad revenue, and then that's cut in, by whatever, 50, 70%, and you have no other streams of income, you might have set yourself up for, some rough weather. And the same thing goes for like when Amazon, cut their um, affiliate earnings by around the same time period. So,
Which doesn't make sense because they're having like a record year, but
yeah, that's a whole other
yeah,
conversation, right?
yeah. And then the other thing I'd add to that is you just got to run super lean, right? Like when I had the beverage companies, I spent a lot of stupid money on stupid things that didn't move the needle in terms of sales. And ultimately that really was a big contributing factor to why those brands and companies failed. So with Bikerumor, I've been super lean. Like I took and continue to take a very small paycheck and use resources to try and hire people or pay my team well. But ultimately, like none of us are getting rich off of this. It's a passion play. I mean, you can build a big publishing house, a big digital media brand and company. But if this year's proven anything, it's that if you're not running lean and you're not making every dollar count, then you're going to struggle. Like we've seen over the past 3 years, we've seen a lot of really well-known, well-established cycling websites and magazines go under, right? Or they'll get acquired for nothing, right? Or most of them just folded. And it's
Wow.
because they were doing stupid stuff. They were spending stupid money, or they didn't understand that you can't pay some people like $70,000-$80,000 to write about bikes. It's kind of silly. So that's the thing. It's just like run as lean as you can. Like you don't need stickers, you don't need promo t-shirts to give away and stuff. So like, I mean, we just don't do any of that stuff.
How do you measure and evaluate what's worked for Bikerumor and what hasn't?
Yeah, it's some experimentation, right? Like
Okay.
from a content side, so this year we tried doing like taking one of the girl that writes for us out of the UK, Jessie May. Like she really wanted to race the Enduro World Series. So we're like, all right, we'll try it. We tried to get some brands
Wow.
to sponsor it, and we bought the plane tickets, paid for the entries and all this stuff. And like all in all, it was quite an expensive experiment. And then we built a content storyline around that, right? Like she would do a multi-part video series. And like ultimately the content was really good, but the interest level was super low. And it's a shame because it's a fun story, right? And there's a lot of people that I think wonder what it's like to try and race as a pro on, on the world stage level of riding. But we're not the only ones that weren't able to make that succeed, right? Like one of our biggest competitors and a site that's arguably way bigger than us in many measurements is tried something similar. And, we talked to a lot of the brands that sponsored that one, and bar none, they were all disappointed with the outcome, right? Like they didn't get the ROI from sponsoring it. I don't know how the traffic was for them, but if you're not able, unfortunately, if you're going to try and a big expensive content gamble, and you're not able to justify it in terms of revenue, then you can't. So if the brands aren't going to sponsor it, and that's what we found, right? Like when we started explaining what we're doing, they're like, well, we tried something like this with the other one and we didn't get any ROI. So we like maybe covered our costs on that. But then if you look at it, right, like, okay, so we broke even, but you can't grow a business breaking even, right? Like, so we could have put that same time and energy into other things that have clearly shown over the past years to produce more revenue, help us grow our site traffic, grow YouTube subscribers and this, that, and the other. So it was an experiment and you have to try these things. You just have to make sure that while you're trying these things, you're still doing all the stuff that pays the bills. And so that's really key. And then as far as just like measuring, right, like I think ultimately the true measure is somebody going to sponsor it, so that we know that our Ask a Stupid Question series and we know our reader survey contest and some of these other things work for us because people keep coming back for them, and we sell them out pretty frequently. So I would say, like, if it's selling, it's working.
Yeah, no, that's very, very true. Are there any, big mistakes or regrets of things that you would have done differently along this journey?
Been a little more careful where we sourced our content. Sometimes we sourced it from places that didn't appreciate the fact that we were sharing their content. So we got, some bad vibes in the industry for a little while from doing some of that stuff, and got called out on social some, and it hurt, right? Like when somebody's
Mm-hmm.
trashing you personally, trashing your site, then, you have to explain to your writers that, like, look, I effed up and I know this is affecting you. They were far more stressed out about it than I was. Um, but yeah, you just got to be careful, especially now. I mean,
For sure.
everyone's racing to try and cover so much of the same stuff that you just have to really do your own thing, and you have to be really careful that you've got everybody understands, copyright. They understand, just all that stuff. So I think that's the biggest one that anybody who knows our history would probably agree.
Fair enough.
And it's been a long, long time since any of that. Like, we learned hard lessons, but the thing is, we codified it. We said, look, this is where we messed up. This is how we can avoid this in the future. Don't do these things. Here's how you do it right. And we put that all into the writer's guide. And then we trained everybody, say, look, these are the reasons why we're doing things the way we're doing. And so everybody understands why. And I think that's key, right? Like,
yeah,
just hire somebody and say, hey, yeah, write about this. And then if they don't understand why you're doing what you're doing and the way you're doing it, then they're just going to probably make a lot of the same mistakes and cause a lot of pain.
if you could tell your old self any advice before beginning your publishing journey back in 2008 with what you know now, what would you say?
The stuff I just talked about would be the big one.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think the bigger thing is, like, really more how to run the business. Like, I've learned so much in the past few years, just like how to run this as an actual business. I mean, it was, and in many ways still is, a lifestyle business, right? Like, I have a really good time. I make enough money, but I get to, in normal years, travel the world, riding bikes in amazing places, get wined and dined by the brands. And so does my team. And we have a killer time. Like, it is the ultimate lifestyle business that we just happen to get paid to do. So it's kind of a dream come true for a lot of cyclists. What the cyclists don't see on the back end is all the hard work. And so, like, if I had realized many, many years ago, say, look, like, you could go screw around on bikes and just have fun today, or you could put in a couple hours extra per week to do these things to grow the business would probably be a lot further along now. Like with the content side, right? Like, I ignored paid content for far too many years. I ignored video for far too many years. So,
And I have one final question for you, and it kind of bleeds in a little bit to what you were just speaking of, but there's a lot of SEO experts and people in the digital publishing space that are always spouting off advice when it comes to building a website. And then there are also a lot of publishers on the other side who have what we call, SOS, shiny object syndrome, where publishers gravitate toward, whatever is the next best thing to get traffic, to make more money. And despite all of that, what would be one piece of advice that you think it's important for publishers to remember to achieve sustained, website growth?
I mean, it's pretty simple. Like, we try not to touch the shiny stuff with that, because, like, I get, like, we use Yoast Premium, or, for the SEO plugin. So I get the emails, and every week it's like, you could do this and this and this. And I'll click on it, and I'm like, damn it, why did I click on that? And I'll waste an hour reading about something that we're never going to do, right? Because it's this infinitesimally small little tweak, and it's all this extra stuff that you got to do, and all these steps. And I'm like, ultimately, just focus on the basics, right? Like, the basics to me is, top down, right? Like, work from top down. Is your headline good, right? Because if the headline sucks, nobody's going to click. Once somebody clicks and they're in there, right? Like, is the structure good? And there's some pretty simple things you can do with structure. Is like, if I'm scrolling through the page, right? Like, if you see my headline and all this is text right here, you're probably done, right? So it's like headline, picture, right? And then a little text. And what do you see, like, right here, right at the bottom of the screen, just barely teasing, right? Another little subheading or a picture or something, because you're like, oh, what's that? Okay, let's scroll that into view, right? And then this one gets here, and then, like, oh, what's this? And it's just like, keep people coming down the page, like, keep showing them a little something when they get to that point. And you got to make sure that's that's working on mobile and desktop and everything else now. Probably almost, I'd say, more mobile than not now. And it doesn't have to be images. It could be anything, bullet point list, whatever, right? Like visually, you have to pull readers down the page if you want to get them through the article. And there's a lot of nuances to how to do that, but that's the basics, right? Like the basics though are name your images. How many, I try not to tell my competitors this, but like I can tell the images and even the brands. This is what kills me, is the brands. I'll pull an image from a brand's website if we're covering their product, and the image file will be like a string of letters and numbers that makes no sense. I'm like, that is the lowest hanging fruit. Just name your damn image something coherent about what's in that image, right? Like, it should not be IMG 5049. It should be like new Trek full suspension mountain bike, blah, 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 right? Like, because what's going to show up in search? So like we'll often show up in search better than the brand that makes the product, just because we take 2 seconds to rename the image. It's like just that. It's just basics, right? It's not fancy. Just do the smart, simple stuff, and that tends to work. And I should say, like, we've grown to be one of the largest bike websites. I would say the largest cycling tech blog in the world, and it's 100% organic growth from just doing the basics. We don't pay for any traffic whatsoever.
That's awesome. And I feel like a lot of publishers might be like, oh, well, there's no secret sauce, there's nothing. And in reality, if you want to do it the right way, it's everything that you speak of. So I really appreciate you joining me today, Tyler, and having this conversation. Is there anywhere people listening can follow you, follow Bikerumor? You have any social channels you want to shout out?
Yeah, sure. So Bikerumor, if you're into bikes, pedal bikes, not motorbikes. It's just at Bikerumor on all the socials. And if you want more like content strategy stuff, I do a lot of that with my newsletter and everything. And I'm just at Tyler Benedict, so TylerBenedict on all the socials. And check that out and get my content marketing newsletter. So
awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for having this conversation, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
All right, Tyler. Take care.
See you. Bye.
See ya. So that is all for today's Ezoic Publisher Profile. I appreciate you guys joining me. If you haven't already, let me know what you think of Tyler's strategies below in the comments. Give the video a big thumbs up down below, and also hit that big red subscribe button. And if you didn't see last week's episode, I'll go ahead and put that up in the corner of my interview with John Furlise of CubsInsider.com. And I will see you guys next Tuesday.